2022. We'll call this meeting of Fergus Falls City Council Committee to hold to order. Roll call, please. Here. 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 Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
And we have a quorum. First item this morning, we're going to welcome our legislative liaison, Joel Carlson, this morning to give us a legislative update on the happenings in St. Paul. Good morning, Joel.
Hey, well, good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. I was speaking with Andrew yesterday, and he said, we've got a work session at 7 o'clock. I'm like, you're the only city in the state that has these 7 in the morning. But I'm going through town. I'm going to stop in at the liquor store. There's an issue that I'm working on for liquor wholesalers that
They don't open till 10. They don't open till 10.
This is a scheduled appointment. I'm hoping that they'll be there, but so I'm gonna stop in there. And since I'm here, I've got a little bit of business to do with Andrew. So, as you maybe have read from my updates, the legislature's on break right now until Tuesday, April 19th. So they're on their traditional kind of spring break. They've passed their respective budget and tax bills out of committee, and I think everyone agrees they are at best a work in progress. The two parties are very far apart on many issues, spending, taxes. I mean, it's just, to give you an example, in the environment area, the Senate target is 0 and the House is about 300 million. So it's about like that in every area. So they've got about 5 weeks left when they come back next Tuesday to try and hammer this out. And I anticipate that they will do a few things before the end. I don't think they're going to spend the entire projected surplus. I think they're going to spend some of it. I think they are going to do something with the 1.2 billion of American Rescue plan funds that are available to spend, because there's risks to the legislature if they don't do that. If they go past May 23rd and don't appropriate that money, the way the federal law is set up, those funds become available for the governor at his discretion to deploy as he chooses. And I think the legislature wants to be involved in that decision making. And so I think they will get that done. I think they are going to pass a bonding bill somewhere north of $2 billion. I think they'll have a very substantial bonding bill, and I'm hopeful for that. And as you know, we're asking them to fund phase 2 of the Riverfront project. I drove by it this morning. It's looking awesome. And then we'll see if they can get a tax bill together. We have a tax request in front of them as it relates to the sales tax request that's going to go to the voters in November. And we've talked to the committee chairs about that, and it's in play. There are a couple communities. Warren is another one that has asked to just not change their request, just change the number to reflect inflation and costs that have gone up since we started. And so those are things that we're active and working on. We've had a little bit of work with the LCCMR grant requests that we're hoping to get across the goal line here before June 30th for the dairy project. So we've been plenty busy and happy to answer questions. I wanted to just stop in and let you know that we're there, we're active, and we're trying to get a few things on behalf of the city across the goal line. And as you know, the redistricting maps are now out, which has had a major kind of impact on the legislative session. We've had about 30 incumbents that have been paired against one another. Some have moved, some have retired. We're at about 50 retirements right now of the 201 legislators. So by the time the election rolls around and we have turnout, we may have 70 new legislators in January of 2023, and that's a significant turnover, but not unusual in a redistricting year. In 2012, when we went through this, 42 members didn't run again, and so we're running just right about it. little bit above that number. So that's to be anticipated. Our area has changed in the maps. You know, we currently have Fergus and Alex in one district. That's not going to be the case anymore. Our bulk of our district is going to go more towards the west, Ottertail County and to the west. And so that's going to produce some change for us. As you know, our longtime Senator Bill Ingebrigtsen is not going to run again for re-election, so we're going to have new representation somehow in the Senate and in the House. And so those are all important things that impact things that go on at the Capitol that impact the city. So we're keeping a close eye on that too. So happy to answer questions, Mr. Mayor. Just happy to be here and the nice rainy morning. And then from here, I'm headed to St. Paul. So
Well, thanks for everything you're doing in St. Paul for us, Joel. Thanks for being here this morning. Anyone have any questions about anything?
I got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I read somewhere about looking at a tax reduction for the people of Minnesota. Do you think that one will go through, or is it through?
I do, and I think the question is how much. The Senate tax bill is an $8.3 billion permanent tax cut, which is being resisted by the House and the governor on a permanent basis. The governor's plan is about a $3 billion tax cut plan that would go out immediately with some type of rebate checks or some mechanism to put that out to taxpayers immediately. And so that's the governor's plan, and the House is about 1.8 billion of tax cuts in different areas. So I think they are going to make some permanent structural changes to the tax code. We can't, it's just not it's not good management to have that much continual over taxation. I mean, I'm not saying that in a pejorative way. It's just they're collecting too much. You shouldn't be running $9.2 and $9.3 billion surpluses, and so, and that's projected in, into 2025. So, they do have some room to make some changes. What's going on is a little bit of election factoring, which is, should I wait until January of 2023 and make decisions with maybe a new governor, maybe a new House or a new Senate? And so the hesitancy to maybe do too much change in May of 2022 is partly reflective of an election coming up in about 5 months.
Well, we always appreciate your insights. I think there is.
Well, happy to be here, and Andrew, I will see you a little bit later on in the morning. And please email or call. I hope you guys are getting updates from me, or you should be on a kind of weekly basis. And so I'll keep you informed, and let's make sure. I mean, our number one goal here is to get a bonding bill done. That's our chief objective for the session, and I hope we're on track to get that done. And some of the other things that we're working on, we'd like to see happen. But we want to get that bonding bill done and get that project completed. So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to be here, and call or write. Anytime you need something, and Andrew always reaches out. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
All right. Next item is a discussion on the Planning Commission recommendation of transitional housing use. And we'll call on our community planner, Karen Flom. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning. Thank you, Your Honor, and good morning, City Council members. So this is a recommendation of the Planning Commission for a transitional housing use. So just as a refresher, last summer there was a community organization called Welcome House that was looking to purchase a single-family home in the R1 one-family residence district. And the nonprofit was looking to operate transitional housing for pregnant women. But the issue with the zoning code that they ran into was that they were proposing to have more than 5 unrelated people living together in a dwelling. And so they came to the Planning Commission, to discuss what their proposed use was. The Planning Commission, a couple of times at monthly meetings, looked at some suggested code revisions, and finally decided that it would be best to maybe take those conversations into a smaller setting, like a subcommittee, and also approached the City Council to form a joint subcommittee. So the subcommittee was made up of 2 members of City Council Council. Member Scott Kwame attended those meetings, and then 2 members of the Planning Commission who were Jeff Stanislawski, who was the previous chair of the Planning Commission, and Kelsey McIntosh Elig, who is now the vice chair of the Planning Commission. So that subcommittee, through a couple of meetings in January 2022, came up with the wording that's in the packet. And then the Planning Commission made a couple of tweaks at its public hearing March 28th. So the version that you have essentially comes from that subcommittee as tweaked a little bit by the Planning Commission. So just broadly speaking, we have the text pulled up on the screen as well, and it was included in the packet. So the transitional housing would affect 3 sections of the zoning code. So the first would just be adding a definition. What is it? So it's a residential facility that is operated by specific types of organizations. So it's, not just anyone can call themselves transitional housing. The second would be allowing it as a conditional use in any residential or industrial zone and any business zone, as long as it would be on the 2nd floor or above. The conditional use permit path also lays out specific conditions that the application would have to meet in order to be approved, as well as a mechanism for the CUP to be revoked through the regular CUP revocation process that the zoning code has. And finally, it also adds a required number of off-street parking spaces, so just putting sort of that standard to evaluate everyone on the same level. And if for some reason an organization thought that they didn't need to have that much parking, what's been done in the past in speaking with other planning commission members, staff, and the city attorney is just requesting a variance. So that could be done at the same time. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions that there are. Usually when the Planning Commission makes a recommendation, those typically just go to the consent agenda, but since this was a little bit of something different than the City Council usually sees, we wanted to bring this to Committee of the Whole for discussion and any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I have a question. So is it kind of typical, just out of curiosity, like the 2nd floor requirement, is that in commercial zones? Is that kind of typical if it's not a retail use?
I think what the Planning Commission, when they made that recommendation at their meeting, they just were concerned about downtown, and they just wanted to preserve sort of that commercial on the ground floor with any residential uses on the 2nd floor or above.
Yeah, I think that's wise. It makes sense. Thanks. Anthony?
So Matthew House, how does that relate? Will this change anything for them?
So that wouldn't require them to now get a conditional use permit, but if they were to expand, they would be subject to that requirement.
Right.
Chief has a comment.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I have to apologize both to Karen and Clara and the Planning Commission. It was when this topic came up in our department head meeting, I kind of misunderstood a different transitional housing project that was going on in the community. But I would like to share with the council, I think a lot of what has been presented here is very good. I would just recommend that we exclude R1 from any transitional housing. I think you should also maybe consider R2 as being exempt from this transitional housing. We had issues over the years with other entities that have come in and run transitional housing in R1 zones. So when we talk about transitional housing, I would think more along the lines of a halfway house. Some people ask, well, is it a group home? What is it? I would think along the lines historically as like a halfway house. We've had issues with like Department of Corrections, for example, ran a transitional housing, lot of issues within the neighborhood that kind of snuck in under a rental property. And we've just had some other issues over the years. So I think, when we talk about zoning, R1 is really meant for single-family homes. I think that's what people have the expectation of. When we look at what we have currently for transitional housing, I think they're in a proper zone. I think one is maybe in an R4 zone, and the other one, I'm not exactly sure what zone it's in, but it's bordering a residential and a business zone. So I think those fit within the proper zone. So again, I wish I maybe would have brought this up to the subcommittee earlier, so it doesn't look like we're kind of disconnected with our presentation. But like I said, I would just strongly encourage you to, if you adopt these things, which I think there's a lot of good points, is that maybe we exempt R1 and R2 from transitional housing. So
Thanks, Chief, for the input. I think it's important to have your input. Question, Chief, when you mentioned the like a halfway house versus a group home, were you saying like a group home would still, because I think there's a number of group
yeah,
homes.
this doesn't apply to group homes.
Okay.
So this, like I said, would apply to, like I would say, a halfway house.
Sure.
And each halfway house is different. Some, I've served on the board of one. There's staff on site 24/7.
Yep.
There's programming that goes on there. We have others where I think under this proposal, you wouldn't necessarily have someone on site. You could just have multiple people living in transitional housing and not have staff on site. And
Sure.
I think that's a concern for me too. I look at just, a couple examples that we've had where you do have staff on site. We probably have less calls for service at those facilities versus those that are run where people are just allowed to live there and there's no, real structure and supervision. So again, I just be mindful of some of the issues that we've had, when I'm looking back probably 20 years
Sure.
of issues that we've had. But like I said, I very supportive of what was brought up here. I just think we should look at excluding R1, and like I said, I think it's up to you if you want to exclude R2 as well. But
So I think to me, it would be reasonable to incorporate the suggestions of chief and law enforcement into a amended changes to the code for Monday night's consideration. Does that make sense? So you guys don't want to make the decision now if you want to exclude R1 and R2?
So, Chief,
Tom?
the exclusion you're proposing, would this affect the request from Welcome House?
I think that they have pulled out of their. Okay, I don't know, and I guess part of my thing too is, we have, and I get sometimes we get pushback from the city that we're not easy to deal with, but we have zoning rules for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And when you buy a property and it doesn't fit with the zoning, I don't know if you can really come back and blame the city for, it's us that's causing the problem. I think most people that are a developer or a professional developer would know that, well, this is what our project is. This is the scope of our project, and we have to find the right property that would allow this type of activity. So I guess I don't know where they're at, but again, I think you have to be careful. Like, we're making policy here, and you can't look at the specific type of organization, because the next organization that come through and wants to do this, might not be as amenable to the residents in the area.
Sure,
So I think we have to be mindful of that as well.
sure.
So,
Chief, the halfway house on Union, they have staff there.
correct, yeah.
All
And
the time.
I've sat on that board for a number of years, and
I
yes.
have also. So,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, and again, we have 24-hour staffing, and again, probably not as many issues as,
And if they don't go by the rules, they're out of the
Yep.
house.
Yep.
So
and again, zone, it's kind of in that
it's close.
zone where we're starting to mix business with residential. So,
Thanks, Chief. Clara?
council consider sending this back to the planning commission to
Yeah.
continue that work with law enforcement before it comes back before council again?
I think that,
I think
I
that'd
think
be
it's a
great.
good idea.
someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thanks,
Got
Scott.
another comment.
And, yeah, Scott, you're working on this too, right? So,
Right, and just to, I don't know, give a little bit of how it might have come to be what we've got in front of us. 2 points. One is any application that would be looking for this, that would fall under this category, was going to be required to go through the CUP process, at which time any number of conditions could be added or changed through that process. So if that meant the specific use for the halfway house got excluded in the course of that CUP, that could happen. So the verbiage here, the wording, was kind of open to allow for the CUP to really be modeled or molded to fit whatever that specific request was or not, and how that would fit in that specific application, that specific neighborhood, that kind of thing. The second thing was that what was behind this from the beginning was this specific request from the Welcome House. And so we were thinking more along the lines of that type of a use and how to make it work well for that and other things, but that was the direction we were headed. And so the thoughts about halfway houses and what other issues might have come up that way wasn't necessarily top of mind. So it wasn't that we weren't looking for it, but we weren't looking for some of those things, or else we probably would have even invited the chief to come and, give us his input. And I guess we overlooked that.
yeah, no, we'll get it, no doubt about it. Send it back to the planning commission and
I do got
everyone's input and,
one comment.
yeah, go ahead.
And
Brent.
I agree with Chief on this one. I mean, I talked to Andrew earlier about some questions. And my problem is, I've got several streets in my ward where even like Oriole Circle, we got 2 or 3 group homes in there. And they're packing these, and then we passed something several years back allowing conditional use permits for people to start businesses in residential neighborhoods. And when people buy a house in a residential neighborhood, they buy that for a reason. Now, all of a sudden, we're allowing all the group homes, we're allowing all the businesses to start in there. This is just one more step, and I'm in favor with this. Anywhere else, but I'm not in favor of R1 or, possibly even R2.
Thanks, Brent. And Scott, thanks for the work on the group put together. So there's a motion to send this back to the planning commission. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Just one additional, when it comes back, could we get a map of R1 and R2 so that people can kind of visually see where they are?
Sure.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion and update on the Dr. Magnuson Park. And Sarah Duffy's here, and Andrew, I think, is going to have some comments too. But good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Your Honor and council members. So we're getting closer. At this point, just waiting for road restrictions to be lifted, which hopefully will be sometime the end of May. I'm before you, maybe the 4th of July, I'm not sure. So I'm in front of you this morning. We have a donor that has approached us and is interested in giving a substantial sum of money, the largest donor that we've had besides Lake Region Healthcare. Affinity Plus Credit Union wants to purchase a piece of equipment and donate $50,000 to the project. Their donation is contingent on purchasing a specific piece of equipment, actually 2 pieces of equipment. One of the things that we don't have incorporated into our current design is something that is ramped. And I've learned a lot about children with disabilities through this process of planning and designing this park. And one of the things that I learned maybe after our design and talking with parents of children with disabilities is not all children can be transferred out of their wheelchair onto a piece of equipment. Some people are wheelchair bound, and obviously that is probably apparent to some, but when I was planning, all of the equipment that we have in the playground is ADA accessible, and all of it has the ability for a child to be transferred onto, but we don't have anything that is ramped that would allow a wheelchair bound individual to go on or engage with. We do have some musical instruments and things like that that they'd be able to engage with, but not something that they can actually physically go on and play. So Affinity Plus would like to purchase what's called a sway fun. It's a ramped, it kind of sways back and forth like a boat. And then they would also like to purchase a communication board, which is a board with images on it that allows a nonverbal autistic child to communicate. So those are the two things. The estimated cost for the actual equipment plus installation is about $40,000, which leaves an additional $10,000 to go into the project towards the remaining amount that we have to raise. And I should have, yesterday snuck up on me, I should have reached out to Bill to ask for an updated amount of how much we have, but
I printed it out.
I think based upon my calculations, I think we did receive $30,000 from Lake Region Healthcare. We're still waiting on one pledge of $5,000 to come in from them. So I think with the Affinity Plus 10,000, we're probably about $30,000 to $40,000 from our goal.
Yeah, because we'd be at like 325,000 of external donations, and then we've committed 200,000 from the liquor store. So then that brings us up to 525, then where we're at. So about 50,000 then till and you probably have other pledges that, this is cash receipts, so.
Yep. Yep, and we have other donors and grant requests out there. I'm not concerned about making our fundraising goal, but I am aware that, asking the council's authority to enter into and buy additional equipment before we finished our fundraising pledge is an issue, but at the same time, this 50,000 donation from Affinity Plus is, like I said before, contingent on buying this specific piece of equipment. And so we have money there from them, an additional $10,000 to go into the project. So, on that basis, I would ask that you would allow us to purchase the additional equipment. But I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
I would move to approve that.
Thank you,
I would
Tom.
second.
There's a motion and a second to bring this to the council on Monday night. Anyone have questions for Sarah?
I'll just say thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah, thanks for the hard work, Sarah. It's an exciting project. A lot of people are going to have access to equipment that they haven't had in the past, so thank you.
Yeah.
For all the work you've done and all the donors. All in favor of moving this to the council on Monday night, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries.
Perfect.
Great,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
Thank you.
Next item is a discussion on the RTC photography request, and we'll call on city.
Let me back you up just 1 second, Your Honor.
Oh, sorry.
Council members, the second part of the MP Park, or Dr. Allen Magnuson Park project this morning is to award a concrete quote to Scarrett Concrete in the amount of $39,330. We did solicit 2 quotes for this work. This was the low quote, and Scarrett is prepared to begin as soon as road restrictions are lifted, as Sarah mentioned. That's kind of the next step here to keep things moving along. Bill just highlighted the money that we have available within the fund, and we feel like we're able to move forward with awarding this quote to Scarrett Concrete for $39,330.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Thanks, Jim.
I'll second.
Thanks, Krista. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the RTC photography request.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, council members. We got a few requests recently from a couple local individuals to do photography within the Kirkbride. The first being Jesse Thorstead with Lakes Area 360. He has approached us for a few years now, and it hasn't necessarily worked out, but I think this might be the opportunity. He does 3D tours, really kind of interesting work, really does a good job with that. He's done that for a lot of local businesses, and what he's wanting to do is put together a 3D tour of all of the buildings that are remaining up at the Kirkbride. That would be at no charge to the city. We'd be able to provide that for public use or consumption, so they are able to see what the building looks like inside and feel like they're inside the building. And I think that's a really good alternative to actually having people in the building itself. So that I think is a great opportunity. And then more recently, the Daily Journal reached out and asked if they could take photography or do photography within the building as well. They did a few years ago when they highlighted the Kirkbride in one of their feature stories. So the request now is really to see what's changed in the last few years, but then also to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the city. And here's what this building looked like at that point in time. So I feel like both of these requests are reasonable. We're happy to work with our local folks. We get these requests nationwide all the time, and of course we can't accommodate folks, which is why I need to come before the council to get permission to do these special requests. We're going to ask both entities to wear proper PPE and then sign waivers of liability to cover any potential liability. We will have staff coordinating and assisting both of those groups, so I've asked them to try to find a date that works for both of them so we can do it all at once and coordinate that together and minimize the resources that the city has to put into this. So that's really the request. I'm looking for a motion allowing us to work with these two and coordinate this, and then if it moves forward, you'll obviously see the fruits of those labors through the Daily Journal, but then also with the 3D tour imagery that we'll be able to share with everybody. So,
Thanks, Andrew.
Your Honor, just one question. Will they, obviously the photographs be, can the city get a copy of them that they can distribute, without kind of, any copyright type things? I think, if we're going to allow them in there and photograph it, I would like the city to kind of have the right to distribute those photographs to anybody that comes along and wants a set in the future, as opposed to them, controlling it, and then when somebody else comes along and wants photographs, we have a library of photographs that we can see. Here's a set of photographs.
I think you could make that a condition of granting access, and then we would have them sign the release for those rights. Obviously, the only use we would have for them would be, potential developer or somebody interested in the building, say, here's what it looks like, kind of thing. But the 3D tour itself, I would hope that we could, have a link right to the city's website that everybody would be able to click through or whatever that looks like. But that's a condition that the council could impose if they want to.
I would make the motion including the condition that we have the rights to use the photography.
Sounds good.
I'll second it.
The second. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Andrew. Next item is the annual YMCA Lifeguard Agreement at Pebble Lake, and we'll call on Guy Taylor. Good morning, Guy.
Good morning. Thank you, Your Honor. We appreciate the partnership we've had with the YMCA for the last many years to provide lifeguarding services for the city at Pebble Beach. We're looking to continue that relationship for 2022, and we'll remain at the contractual price of the last few years of $25,000. They had indicated they would like an increase to that, but we had already set the budget. So we're going to be a little creative in how we schedule their time out there. As with most places, seasonal type staff, their hourly wages have gone up considerably. So that's the reason for their increase. And so they're paying their lifeguards more, and so we're going to have to reduce the hours a little bit. But we'll reduce the least used hours at the beach. So shouldn't be a huge public impact, but we're looking for that recommendation to provide those services through the YMCA for $25,000.
I'll offer that, Your Honor.
Thanks, Justin.
I'll second.
Thanks, Krista. All in favor of bringing that motion to bring that to the council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Is the ice going out this year?
Might have to cut a hole.
And then finally, update on pickleball and some other recreational opportunities through the Park and Recs Department.
Yeah, thanks again, Your Honor. So yeah, it's kind of exciting to highlight some of the fun amenities that we offer as a city. Got a list of quite a few things that are going on in the Park Department in your packet, but I'll just go through a few of them. At D Lagoon Park, new wiring is soon to be complete to all the facilities at the park, so that'll be a great addition. We've had a lot of failures in the underground electrical out there over the last few years. Hopefully you've seen the boat launch in the parking lot that was updated last year. It's a great addition. New dugouts at the Legion Field will be coming this fall. One thing to highlight is our volunteers that do so much for the city through different park projects, and one of those is at Farmers Field. The Youth Baseball Association donated the time and the materials for a new batting cage at Farmers Field. So appreciate that. And right next to the Farmers Field is a new archery park that was another volunteer effort with Jeff Struck and Dave Sanderson leading the charge there. As we mentioned, just the last business item, the lifeguards at the beach. A few new dock sections will be looked at for additions to that swimming area. Pickleball has been a topic of conversation for the last couple years, and where we're at now is we're going to convert 2 tennis courts at Athletic Park to be 6 pickleball courts. So with that, we've got to do some groundwork and extend the playing surface to the north like 7 feet. So that work will be underway here shortly, as soon as the frost is out of the ground and we can get concrete trucks moving. And then we'll get a surface on there and get it painted and hopefully usable for pickleball play early to midsummer. With that addition, we'll still have 1 playable tennis court, regulation tennis court at Athletic, and then the 4 at Broadway Park. And then the school, I think, has 8. So Mayor, you had talked with the tennis community, and they were okay with relinquishing these 2 courts, right?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, a couple years ago, is right before the pandemic, a group of citizens came forward, wanted to talk about having pickleball opportunity in the community, and I just got to compliment Guy and your staff because they really engaged with that group and kind of had a can-do attitude. Same is happening right now with a group that's interested in having curling within the community. So Guys always has a can-do attitude and works with those groups to get it done, and they're going to see took an extra year or 2 because of the pandemic, but anyway, to have pickleball in the community this summer, it's going to be its fastest growing sport is what I hear in the country.
Yep.
So anyway, they said there's a lot of interest out there, and we're going to have the opportunity, and hopefully it grows. So thank you, Guy, for being open to that and working with that group.
Yeah, you're welcome. A few more
The
items, if I
snowbirds,
may.
a lot of the snowbirds are
Yeah,
playing
right.
pickleball
Yep.
down south.
Yep.
Want to play when they come back.
Right. So you mentioned curling, so that's right at the forefront. We actually talked about it at the park board meeting on Monday, and we didn't have a quorum there to actually bring a recommendation to the council, but we are hoping to move forward with that and have an actual league formed and equipment purchased and everything for curling at the arena this fall.
Ooh.
Claire's going to be putting out a poll, gauging interest and equipment that residents may have already on hand, so we're moving in that direction. You all know about Higgins Dog Park. That's been a great addition to our park system. We recently added lights to the park so it can be usable after dark. Godell Park, we've got the nice pier that was put out there last summer. We'll have a path and a parking lot built early this season there. We're going to do some work at Adams Park to enclose the picnic shelter to try to keep some of the waterfowl from going into the shelter, fouling it up.
Good luck.
Yeah. Broken Down Dam has been a topic of councils here in the past few months too, and we will, as time allows, get into that park and clean out some of that historic debris, and we'll get some new tables down at the river's edge there, and also just do regular maintenance on the stairways. We're thankful for Sarah and her leadership on that Dr. Alan Magnuson renewal project. Our recreation programs are always a hit. As mentioned in the memo, registration opened for programming last Friday at 8 a.m. By 8:15, Kids Camp was full. So it's a really popular program, and we can expand that if we get some staff. So we've got a few children on waiting lists, and if we can get some staff hired, we can include some of those children. Another popular sport that is up and coming is disc golf. We've got the 27 holes at D Lagoon. Brett Birch, he's a local enthusiast he owns a business for disc golf promotion, and he's offered up 9 baskets to be placed at Roosevelt Park. So Mick and Brett have recently kind of mapped out a course there at Roosevelt, and we need to talk with the school district on a couple basket placements there. But that will be happening soon this summer, and I think that's it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's quite a
lots
list.
going on.
Yeah,
great stuff.
Sorry I didn't have fancy slides like Andrew had with his update.
I didn't do any of the work.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Guy, for that update. That's quite a list. Any questions or comments? Yeah, Scott.
Just one comment. You had mentioned broken down dam. And I know we talked about that, and in the course of you moving things in and out, I remember that the presentation we saw identified that there's lady slipper flowers along the river out there. And to whatever degree it might be possible to identify or mark or somehow either protect or highlight or both the locations of those flowers, I think that would be good.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
We're actually having a training for our park department staff on Thursday to be able to identify all the native plantings that we're putting in the park so that accidentally something doesn't get taken out, sprayed, or whatever. So we'll include lady slipper identification. So I don't think I would know what one looks like if it's not in bloom. So
Yeah, without the flower on it, I'd be
right,
I'd be puzzled too.
yeah.
But
So we'll include that. Thanks.
Thanks,
There's
Scott.
also a few of those along the trail. Lady slippers. Which trail? The Central Lakes Trail.
All right. Tom?
I just have one quick item that I'm on the liaison to the Pedal Fergus Falls board, and there's something that we've been discussing for a little while, and I just wanted to put it on everybody's radar and kind of gauge an appetite for it. A lot of cities are moving to a lower 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on side streets. So it wouldn't be like Union, Lincoln, like the major arteries. It would still be 30 mile an hour, but it shows a significantly reduced amount of accidents and injuries when speed limits are reduced to 20 on side streets in residential areas. We don't have to do anything about it right now, but that's, and I can get some more information and have it sent out. But that is something that the Pedal Fergus Falls board is discussing from a safety perspective, and just wanted to kind of put it on everybody's radar. And maybe at another committee of the whole meeting, we could have Kyle and Brian or whoever may be appropriate, give their thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, we can put that on a future agenda for certain.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
And if there's nothing else to come before the committee, we're adjourned.